What if I told you that right now, there are incredibly sought-after cheeses sitting casually in European markets that would instantly get you stopped at customs? We're talking about foods governments have literally declared too dangerous, too alive, or just too fragrant to travel. In this explainer, we're going to unpack the most legally complicated foods on Earth. We'll look at an entire industry silenced by toxic waste, a cheese saved from extinction by a cartoon, and one legendary wheel that's practically an outlaw. Stick around, because by the end you'll see exactly how a simple block of dairy can spark a full-blown international trade war.
So what happens when tradition becomes a crime? It's a fascinating question, right? I mean, what happens when the foods we've been crafting and enjoying for centuries suddenly become contraband? Today, we're exploring the massive clash between modern food safety, global politics, and ancient culinary traditions.
Section 1. Alive, smelly, and confiscated. To start off, let's look at two iconic French cheeses penalized just for being exactly what they're supposed to be. Take Mimolette. It looks kind of like a bright orange cannonball. Its thick, cratered rind is actually created on purpose by microscopic cheese mites. Yeah, tiny little arachnids that burrow into the surface to create airflow and build this rich, nutty flavor over years of aging. Artisanal genius, right? Well, back in 2013, the FDA didn't exactly agree. They stopped massive shipments of Mimolette right at the US border, declaring the mite population a health hazard, locking up hundreds of thousands of dollars of cheese in customs. Then you've got Époisses de Bourgogne. This stuff is so intensely aromatic that there is a formal notice prohibiting it from being carried on French public transport. You literally cannot take it on the Paris metro. But it faced a much darker ban in the 1990s when French health authorities temporarily suspended its sale over raw milk fears.
The diplomatic fallout over this is just incredible to witness. When the FDA seized that Mimolette, French officials publicly and very loudly called the ban absurd. It actually set off real diplomatic tension before imports were finally allowed back in under super strict mite count limits. And during that 90s raw milk panic in France, Époisses production dropped to near zero. Actually, one dedicated guy, a man named Berthaud, kept making it practically all by himself. He completely refused to abandon the traditional raw milk process until the ban was lifted. It really shows how fiercely people will fight for their heritage.
So we've seen cheese banned for mites and smells, but things are about to escalate. What happens when a dairy product is ripped from the dinner table and thrown directly onto the geopolitical battlefield?
Section 2. Toxic waste and trade wars.
All right, let's dive into mozzarella du buffalo. The trade laws here are basically like two feuding neighbors throwing their absolute most expensive groceries at each other. Consider this deeply unfortunate reality. In 2008, tests on some buffalo mozzarella from Italy's Campania region showed elevated dioxin levels. This was traced back to horrific illegal industrial waste dumping by organized crime in an area known as the Land of Fires. The fallout was staggering. South Korea, Japan, and several other Asian markets instantly banned all Italian buffalo mozzarella imports. They didn't just ban the contaminated farms, they banned the entire country's export. A localized crime issue unfairly shut down a completely innocent national industry across 3 continents simultaneously. It costs hundreds of millions of dollars. The global food chain is deeply interconnected, and this absolutely proves it.
And speaking of interconnected trade, check out this number, 300%. In 2009, the US slapped a staggering 300% import tariff on France's famous blue cheese, Roquefort. Why? It had absolutely nothing to do with food safety. The US used it entirely as a retaliatory weapon in a trade dispute over Europe banning American hormone-treated beef. US trade negotiators specifically targeted Roquefort because it's France's most prestigious, emotionally significant cheese. A $40 block suddenly cost over $160 in the States. They knew it would cause maximum diplomatic pain, a literal Roquefort war.
If weaponizing a blue cheese to fight over beef is wild enough, what if I told you that we once banned dairy entirely based on its color?
Section 3. Smuggled cheese and old science.
Just look at how bizarre legislation can get. Early 20th century, to protect powerful domestic dairy industries from competition, several U.S. states and Canadian provinces aggressively banned the sale of yellow-colored margarine and restricted naturally colored orange cheddar. They wanted to make absolutely sure nothing could visually imitate pure butter or a local cheese. The result? A surreal, thriving black market. Everyday citizens were literally smuggling colored margarine and orange cheese across state borders in the trunks of their cars just to bypass these strict protectionist laws.
And the craziest part is how recently this was happening. Wisconsin, the American dairy state itself,
aggressively enforced these anti-color laws until 1967. People were smuggling yellow dairy products while the space race was happening.
But while the color bans are history, another massive ban is still very much active today. In the United States, any cheese made from unpasteurized raw milk that's been aged for less than 60 days is completely banned. This is based on a 75-year-old FDA rule from 1949, originally meant to stop tuberculosis. The catch? Modern scientists widely question it. Studies show that the natural salt, acidity, and competitive bacteria in aged raw milk cheeses actually create an environment incredibly hostile to pathogens. The EU, Canada, Australia, they all allow it with proper controls. Yet because of this 75-year-old law, an entire category of the greatest artisan European cheeses remains legally banned from American shelves today based on deeply debated outdated science.
So, banned by outdated science? Hold on, because wait until you see the cheese that was saved from complete legal eradication by a claymation cartoon.
Section 4. Cartoons, Copyrights, and Wood Pulp. Enter Stinking Bishop. This is an English artisan cheese washed in fermented pear juice. The aroma is so profoundly extreme that British food writers famously compared it to a rugby team's locker room after a rainy match. Yum! But in 2001, the horrific foot and mouth disease crisis swept the UK. The government imposed massive, sweeping restrictions on moving livestock and animal products. Small farms were legally paralyzed. The single farm that produces Stinking Bishop came within weeks of total permanent extinction. What saved it? A miraculous appearance in the animated Wallace and Gromit film, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. The movie featured the famously fragrant cheese, demand absolutely skyrocketed exactly as the legal restrictions lifted, and the farm was saved by an animated duo.
Now, moving from saving a local farm to a clash of global titans, we got to talk about Parmesan. The European Union grants authentic Parmigiano Reggiano a strict protected designation of origin, or PDO. It's legally protected across 27 countries. If it isn't from specific provinces in Italy, you simply cannot call it Parmesan. But the United States completely rejects this. American producers have made domestic Parmesan for a century, arguing the word is entirely generic, kind of like cheddar. The US and the EU have fought over this through the World Trade Organization for over a decade. It's a staggering clash. In Europe, it's a fiercely protected cultural artifact. In America, it's a generic term with zero legal or culinary connection to the Italian original.
But what no one knows is just how wild those loose legal definitions can actually get. Because the American definition of Parmesan was so broad, a bombshell 2013 FDA investigation found that some grated American Parmesan cheese, the stuff sold in the familiar green cans, contained up to 8% cellulose. That is literally wood pulp filler. It wasn't even technically fraud at the time. The legal definition was simply loose enough to permit wood pulp in your pasta topping. No way, right?
Wood pulp in a green can is a serious legal loophole, for sure. But all these trade wars, tariffs, and smuggling operations pale in comparison to our final subject. Get ready, because we're about to look at the absolute most legally complicated, paradoxical food item on the face of the earth.
Section 5. The Ultimate Illegal Cheese.
We have finally arrived at the ultimate clash of law and tradition, Casu Marzu. Let's be very clear about exactly what this is. Casu Marzu is a traditional sheep's milk cheese from the Italian island of Sardinia. What makes it completely unique and highly illegal is the intentional introduction of the cheese fly. The fly lays eggs, and the live larvae hatch and literally digest the cheese fats, transforming the hard wheel into an intensely flavored, soft cream. And here's the kicker. The presence of living, moving larvae inside the cheese is the required quality indicator. If they're dead, the cheese is considered bad. Obviously, intentionally eating live insects is utterly and completely unacceptable to modern European Union hygiene regulators.
Notice the mind-bending legal gymnastics going on here. Casu Marzu is strictly banned for commercial sale by EU regulation. You can't export it from Italy, and you can't commercially produce it anywhere across 27 member nations. But think about this. Personal consumption? Completely legal. Making it for your own household? Legal. Handing it to a friend as a gift at a private dinner? Completely fine. It is simultaneously banned by a massive continental union, yet entirely legal to sit and eat at your own kitchen table.
Here is the ultimate Casu Marzu paradox. Italy actually tried to get EU-protected designation of origin status for it.
just to preserve the heritage. The EU denied it because you obviously can't grant legal protection to a food that violates all your safety laws. So what happens? It's simply sold quietly but openly in Sardinian local markets and black markets for $100 a wheel or more. And science is even stepping in. University researchers are currently contesting the danger, suggesting the specific enzymes the larvae create might produce unique antioxidant properties found in no other cheese. It's a cultural heritage so deeply sacred to Sardinia that local police would never ever arrest a grandmother for making it. It renders the combined regulatory power of 27 developed nations completely, utterly useless. It's simply too traditional to be legal and too illegal to be protected.
So, why do the foods we love most always make enemies? From mites stopped at the border and trade wars fought with Roquefort to a cheese simultaneously banned by continents yet thriving in local markets, the lesson of this explainer is clear. Ancient traditions consistently survive because people absolutely refuse to let governments outlaw the flavors of their heritage. Food is never just calories. It's history, it's identity, and sometimes it's a little bit of beautiful rebellion. Keep questioning what's on your plate because the story behind it might just be a legal thriller.